So Toldot, we're reading fascinating stories in our passage this week. Actually, that was a nice long reading from the Torah about Jacob and Esau. And these stories are a lot of times misunderstood. We read about in the prophets resound these words saying that God loved Jacob and hated Esau. And I have to try to tell people all the time, it's not really that straightforward in Hebrew. And maybe in English it's that straightforward, but in Hebrew it's a little bit more nuanced. God hated Esau and gave him a huge country and lots of mountains and lots of things. Like he hated him so much, he just blessed him, I'm like, that's not exactly the definition of English word hate. So read between the lines. Yes, God chose Jacob for a reason, and he did love him with the kind of love that he did not love Esau. And God has the prerogative to do these things. And so there are reasons why things happen. We don't always understand them, but God decided to give covenant to Jacob. And that's what these stories all tell us about. And as I was reading the Haftarah this week, my eyes were drawn to the words spoken to the priests. They're very loud words. They're very harsh words. The priests who are being chastised in this chapter, they're definitely doing some bad things. Let's put it this way. Best we can tell, the prophet Malachi, who spoke these words, he spoke these words shortly after Ezra and Nehemiah. Let me just remind you of the context. Like, why did he say what he said to the priests? You see, the temple was rebuilt, but Jerusalem and the Jewish community, they really struggled. The whole entire community did not thrive. And Malachi looked at what's happening in his world, in his community, and he perceived that the real reason why people have not thrived, why people have not prospered, why the glorious restoration promised by other prophets who came before him did not come to be. You see, there these beautiful verses in the prophets that offer us a vision of a glorious restoration, yet that is not what we see in those days. And so they continue to be a prophecy, they continue to be a promise, but they're not being fulfilled. And why? Why that generation was not able to see the flourishing of their society? And the only answer I can come up with is our most significant obstacles in life are usually spiritual. So I know the problem must be spiritual. We don't prosper because God withholds his favor from us. Maybe he does this to get our attention, perhaps. When things go great, we really don't ask questions like why, or why me, or why this. And in this context, Malachi directed his harsh words to the priests because they were complacent, because they were not paying attention to Hashem and not giving him honor in the way that the honor was due. So in Malachi chapter 1, verse 8, God asks the priest this question. When you present the blind for sacrifice, is this not evil? He says, is this not raw? When you present the lame and sick, is this not evil? Why not offer it to your governor? Would he be pleased with you, or would he receive you kindly? Out of all the people in Israel, the priests showed lack of respect towards God. They should have known better. God laments these acts, and he tells them that he wishes that they would just shut the temple doors and stop lighting his altar if they will continue to have so little regard for him. God is quite upset to the words of this prophet, and Hashem says that his table has been defiled by their actions, by their disrespect, that they brought dishonor to the altar. And so there's this whole rhetorical back and forth conversation. How have we done this? And so the prophet pleads as we read these verses, and it's all to really illustrate one major reality, is that God is not being honored and priests are complicit in that. It starts a lot of times from the top. But it's not just the priests, it's the people of Israel as well. In verse 14, God says, "Cursed be the cheater," or the swindler, "who has a perfect male," meaning a male lamb or ram, "in his flock, and he vows it," so he promises, "but he sacrifices the blemished animal to the Lord." So he switches the sacrifice. Many in Israel treated God with disrespect and put priests in a position to do the same. Let me explain a little bit to you about just a tiny bit, a little aside of the temple economy that you have to understand. When people bring offerings, when the country is not doing great, when people are not prospering, they bring offerings that they have. And the priests look at the table and they're not excited what's on it. Remember, this is their table, that's the one they eat from. They're not excited about what's on it. And people start bringing things that are not perfect. Why? Because their hearts are far away from God. And the priests, their hearts are far away because they look at the table and they're saying, is this it? But this is the Lord's table, not just their table. They look at it in a very superficial way. They look at this in a very mechanical way. Like, yes, this is their livelihood. That's how their families will eat. And yes, so people will be tempted, instead of not bringing a lamb that is imperfect, actually to bring a lamb that's imperfect. Why? Because the priest wants to eat. And that's what people would do. They would bring a defective sacrifice in those days. And God says, I'd rather you not. Rather than that, just bring vegetables. Bring something else, not this. And so essentially the economy starts to drive what happens on the altar. And when that happens, what people don't understand is that disrespect is not just from the people and from the priests. It is really, the disrespect is towards God of Israel, who is, he says in his own words, in the end of this first chapter, I am the king, and you disrespect me this way. You bring this to your governor? How would he like that? The people of Israel were in trouble. That's what Malachi says. In his eyes, they were really in a dangerous territory. But this problem of dishonoring God, it has deeper roots. And that's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. The spiritual sickness that is explained in these verses is actually outside of our Haftarah reading for this week. If you really want to know the roots of the problem, you can get to them in chapter 2, in the very middle of the chapter. That's really where it's described. You see the hypocrisy and the dishonesty that began with the people dishonoring really one another and mistreating each other. And how they treat their God is but a reflection of how they live their entire lives. And the overall disposition towards the most common and everyday matters often transfers to everything else we do. Now that brings me to the lessons in these harsh words which I wish to share with you. And may we learn to avoid the path that is so harshly criticized in these verses. So here's the 2 points that I see that perhaps Hashem is saying to us today. First is this: avoid dishonoring people. Avoid dishonoring people. Now, some people and even institutions, they are shameful and they deserve dishonor. I understand. I get it. There are situations when we have to be harsh, when we have to call people out, when we have to point out their appalling behavior. We have to call things what they are, but that should be rare in our lives. And on those rare occasions when we do stand up, when we should be careful not to go too far. Is it truly our place to shame and criticize people around us over and over and over every single day? Maybe on occasion, I see that. Torah teaches us mercy. Torah teaches us long-suffering. Tradition teaches us to give people the benefit of the doubt, and there are good reasons why we are taught such a path. You see, treating people with dishonor over and over, even if they deserve it, it does something to us on the inside. It damages and warps us in some unexplainable way. That is why I caution you about this. We grow accustomed to such behavior and we lose respect for people in general. We gravitate towards gloom and pessimism, and we fixate only on the negative and always running to the worst case scenario in our minds. That becomes an orientation, a disposition, an attitude in our hearts. And then when we need to show honor, we can't do it properly and we don't know how. Our hearts have become so invested in the opposite. We lose the balance. It changes us. That's why I say avoid dishonoring people. There are moments when it has to be done, but not all the time. And my second point is let honor and respect be your daily disposition. Our actions and our inactions often stem from the disposition of our hearts. It's what's inside of us that comes out. If our hearts are constantly filled with grievances, with strife, with disrespect, with dishonor, with negativity, with the hypocrisy of every sort, it will take toll on our souls overall. We will interact with the world around us in the light of that which fills us. And the way we treat people will inevitably affect our relationship with our Maker. This is what happened in Malachi. This is what we're seeing. The root is that the people were treating each other dishonorably, and that was transferring even to the way they treated Hashem. And that's why I say, let honor and respect be your daily disposition. Focus on that. Yeshua often taught us the way we interact with people and the way we treat those who are not in a position to harm us, or not in a position to bestow any sort of benefit upon us, shows our inner heart, our disposition, our true character. His teachings, they call us on showing benevolence, even mercy to those who clearly do not deserve it. Why would he teach that? Because that is how Hashem behaves towards us. It's a pattern. It's a pattern that we can follow. So that is why I say, let honor and respect be your daily disposition. And that will filter through. It will filter through with how we treat other people. It will filter through with how we worship God. Don't want any one of us ever being accused and told the kinds of things that the prophet says to the priests. And the only way that I can think that we can avoid it is by showing honor and respect on a daily basis and avoiding dishonor when it comes to it. Shabbat Shalom.
Please rise. We're going to return the Torah scroll to the Ark, and we're going to chant the Eitz Chaim on 535. Eitz Chaim